gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from the Kardashians with the help of our special guest, Head of Marketing and Communications of Foursquare.
Kylie just made me wait for an hour for her to do a photo shoot.
Whatever!
And now we are finally
It's
on our
Fashion
way.
Week!
Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up.
Last year, we made a commitment to ourselves. Slow down, take some time off, be present in the moment.
Have the Kardashians slowed down? No.
Michelle, how are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful to have you in the show. We're going to chat Kim K and the rest of the Kardashian pals. We're going to talk content and marketing at Foursquare and everything in between. So why the heck did you pick the Kardashians to talk about today?
First of all, I love reality TV, so I think we just need to start there. But what I love about the Kardashians, and I love about this approach, Ian, and I know we talked about this a little bit when we had originally met, was when you are in B2B marketing, it is very easy to go into an echo chamber where you are looking only at what your competitors are doing. I'm sure your sales team is looking at what competitors are doing and sending you in marketing Slacks or emails about, some event or some press release that they've put out. And it's very easy just to do things that other competitors are doing, regardless of whether or not they're impactful, but simply because you become the part of this echo chamber. And I think by taking the approach that you take, by looking at something that is not within the industry, I think it's really a great exercise to tease out some really important learnings. And I think there's probably no better marketing machine that we can look at than the Kardashians. And when I say the Kardashians, you sort of alluded to this. It's both Kim, the show The Kardashians, which I think I'll probably talk the most about, and also the Kardashian Jenners, if you will. They are an exercise in a marketing powerhouse and some really great things that we can tease out what we should be looking at to replicate, and some things that we can use as lessons for things that we can avoid.
Zooming out, tell us about your role at Foursquare.
Sure. So I run the marketing and communications team at Foursquare. I've been here probably about 3 years now. Most people know Foursquare as from our consumer app days. We sort of introduced the check-in to the cultural zeitgeist, if you will. But a couple of years into our consumer journey, we realized that the technology that we were using to power our apps could be very useful to brands and businesses when they were thinking about either doing things like making business decisions, like measuring media, whether or not that ad campaign actually drove in-store traffic, or whether or not they wanted to build their own really engaging consumer apps. So rideshare apps, as an example, anything that has to do with food delivery, hotels can use us to say, hey, if you check into your hotel, what are the great coffee shops around? So we realized that that technology could be very useful to companies besides ourselves. So we started our own journey to start building the leading geospatial platform. So even though people know us mostly from our consumer days, I would submit that probably people are using us even more now. They just don't even realize that they're using Foursquare technology because we're using our tools and our software is being used by brands to do all types of really interesting things when it comes down to location and either advertising and measurement, or when it comes down to sort of their own digital experience, if you will.
And we're going to dig all into that here in a bit and your marketing strategy. As specifically, this is a teaser. Perhaps you have one of the most interesting websites of anyone that we've ever had on the show. And we're going to get into that later in the episode.
Oh, man, that I don't know if I can wait. I'm like interested.
Meredith, what the heck is the Kardashians?
So the Kardashians, the show, actually came from Ryan Seacrest.
And this is American Idol.
But it originally was called Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And this is back in 2007. Ryan was basically like looking for another show like The Osbournes on MTV.
Come over here, little rich boy. Live off daddy and mummy's money, do you?
And he was asking around with casting directors, and that's when the name The Kardashians came up. And I guess according to Refinery 29, it was their mom, Kris, who ended up pitching the idea to Ryan. And
no
from
way.
there, yeah, I know, right?
Just imagine we're going back to 2007 and you're sitting there at you're a whatever junior associate and you're sitting down and it's Ryan Seacrest and Kris. Did she go by Kardashian or Jenner?
She was Jenner, I believe, at that time because she was married.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Kris Jenner sitting there at the table deciding the weight of the world, and we had no idea. You know what I mean? Seriously? Literally, that meeting of all the meetings in film and television, maybe some Marvel movie meetings back in the day, I think probably would surpass it revenue-wise. But goodness gracious, it's about as influential as it gets. And it all starts with Ryan Seacrest. It's amazing. Anyway,
meeting of the minds.
Yeah, I mean, anyways, Meredith, go on.
It's all good.
It is funny.
Basically, like Ryan Seacrest at that point was like, I'm going to send a cameraman. We're going to check out this family and see if there's anything there. And so he sends a cameraman to a Kardashian barbecue. And this was like the deciding point. I can only imagine what was going on then. So Ryan Seacrest told Cosmopolitan, like the cameraman came back, reported back to him. And he said, I remember perfectly, the cameraman called me from their house Sunday afternoon and said, it's absolutely golden. You're going to die when you see this tape. They're so funny. They're so fun. There's so much love in this family and they're so chaotic. They throw each other in the pool. And I was kind of like, doesn't everyone throw their sibling in the pool? I was like, right. You can literally go to anybody's backyard barbecue. That's happening. Anyway.
Also, I think you need to throw in all the words that he didn't say is they're beautiful. One of the people was one of the most famous lawyers ever. One of the people was one of the most famous Olympians ever. It's all of that. And by the way, they're just like us.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's really the winning thing. It's the perfect chemistry, all the things coming together. So they started the show in 2007. And then about 3 seasons in, I guess Kris was like, this is getting a little stale. This feels so cringy to me. You guys let me know what you think. So that's when Kourtney became pregnant.
She's late and she's nauseous and she doesn't think she's pregnant. Is she insane?
And they used it to tease the next season. And they're basically you have to tune in to find out who the father is.
No way.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what started to carry the show. And from there, it's Kim and Kanye became an item that brought a lot more viewership to the show. So it's things like that, having more children they saw as content, which is okay. And according to Kris's memoir in 2011, she said, I started to look at our careers like pieces on a chessboard. Every day I woke up and walked into my office and asked myself, what move do you need to make today? It was very calculated. My business decisions and strategies were very intentional, definite, and planned to the nth degree.
So my mom came up with the term mothership, and she said, no matter what, we'll always do our show until it stops being fun, and we'll always have our mothership.
So she is calculating this whole thing. Its 5th season premiered in May of this year. Of course, this is 5th season of The Kardashians. It premiered to nearly 4 million viewers in its first 4 days across Hulu, Disney Plus, and Star Plus. And that made it the most watched unscripted series premiere this year on all Disney streaming platforms. So it exploded, right?
You're doing amazing, sweetie.
People are also going back to the very beginning of the show. So viewership of the first season has tripled since the 5th season premiered, if that makes sense.
Huh?
But altogether, it's actually their 25th season of reality TV, which
Crazy.
kind of blows my mind. I cannot imagine being in a reality TV show for 25 seasons. So Keeping Up with the Kardashians aired from 2007 to 2021. So that was 14 years. And the Kardashians started in 2022. But all that said, like, what makes it appealing, I think, to me is like, one, content and marketing wise, like they have what you, I think, Ian, called a true empire, right? So their marketing powerhouses, like Michelle, you said, they all have like their personal brands now. Skims, Kylie Cosmetics, Kylie Skin, 818 Tequila or 88, I don't know how to say it. They have a tequila brand. 818. Mm-hmm. They have Good American. They have so many others.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
The other thing is like you get an inside look at the personal lives of like these very successful people. And then you kind of are like, what makes me so different from them, right? Like, how do I get to where they are? There's like high production quality. Everything's beautiful. Everyone's beautiful. They roll up in Rolls Royces.
Go with your Bentley that no one could afford. We don't want your Bentley.
They have their hair done and they're made up. They're just like put together. They've got it all going on.
First of all, it's lucky enough that I can shave my legs.
They're in relationships to like, or married to high profile people. So like there's Kanye, there's Travis Barker, there's Tristan Thompson. And then I think you're also part of it that makes it like, I think easier to just like really get into is like, you're seeing people who've lived their whole lives in the spotlight. And like in the very first episode of the first season, like Kim is having to sort of like reconcile again, like evidence of her sex tape coming back up and her kid, like kind of seeing something on his Roblox game, like some ad for it. And she was like, why is this happening? And it's like, they're navigating fame and having moments of vulnerability and things like that. So you're like, they are real people, even though they look like so perfect. And I think that like makes it like, yeah, it just makes it really appealing. But I think all in all, you're getting involved in other people's business and kind of forgetting about your own. Like everyone's nosy. Everyone wants to know like what's going on with these people, you know? So I think it's just like really appealing. But Michelle, I know we were talking about like why we love the show. Like, what do you love about it? Like, why did you get into it?
I think it's first of all, the fact that they've been on air, I think you said 25 years. Was that
seasons? I don't know if that, yeah.
Oh, 25 seasons. Okay, great. Because I was about to say there are people we've worked with then that do not know a world without the Kardashians, which...
Right.
I mean, that's basically true anyways.
Yeah.
2007.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I love about what the Kardashians have done is that they have not shied away from the fact that they aren't on a reality TV. So there is no fourth wall in a lot of their conversations. So if you are interested in the fact that Khloe was cheated on while she was pregnant, and you were reading that, like that is part of the show and her reaction to it, reaction to the news, etc. The fourth wall doesn't necessarily exist, which I think a lot of the reality TV shows will try to keep up that appearance of like, oh yeah, you're just getting an insight into their lives. But meanwhile, they never actually address the fact that they're on a TV show, where I think the Kardashians, especially in their later iterations, aren't like the jig is up. Like they know they're on a TV show. We know that they're being filmed. They talk also about production and the fact that they are producers on the show and what do they show and what don't they show. So I actually really like that aspect of them. And when I think about marketing in general, and I'd love to get both of your thoughts on this, part of the reason I picked the Kardashians was because of around their distribution. And when we think about B2B marketing, and when I think about the Kardashians, one of the reasons I think they have kept their reality show for so long on TV, when everyone is like, TV is dead, although they're now on streaming versus your traditional network, is because they are not going to be beholden to one type of algorithm that could or could not determine their narrative getting out into the market. And as someone, especially if you're on a consumer side, you used to be able to just buy a Facebook ad, set it, forget it. Your consumer marketing was done. You had 2 or 3 juggernauts, would be your Meta and your Google. B2B marketing sort of said we have LinkedIn, but we're also beholden to any changes that these company makes when it comes down to any of their changes or their strategies. What the Kardashians have done, what Kim has done, has said, okay, we are going to keep our fingers in multiple pots. So they're very active on TikTok, they're very active on Instagram, but they've not let their like ultimate video production, which is their TV show, go, because that is sort of their crowning jewel. And they're also producers on that. So they get a lot of decision making around that. So for me, I love it because I love the entertainment and I love that there's no fourth wall. But as a marketer, I also am taking a look at what they're doing. And I'm like, they're not going to let Instagram decide whether or not they're reaching just 1 million people or 5 million people. They are making sure that they have their own content and their businesses being able to reach different audiences through different channels. And that's one aspect that I think is really fascinating about them myself.
As I was thinking about the marketing takeaways for the Kardashians, everybody's favorite American family, I was thinking about the power of proximity. So if you go back to the origins of this, you have a bunch of like really key sort of tentpole, very American events that they are at the center at. So you have Robert Kardashian is OJ's friend and lawyer, which is one of the biggest things that ever happened in American news ever, right? The OJ Simpson trial. You have, originally as Bruce Jenner in the most famous Olympic sport, in the thing that like the Olympics, still one of the most televised programs or most highest audience programs that's aired on TV, to this day. In the 80s, I mean, you're talking about like the zenith of the Olympics, right? Every single person was glued to this. And, back then, Bruce Jenner is like the most famous American in this.
He was on the Wheaties box.
Right.
Yeah, on the Wheaties box, right? But then you have, the sort of like the next generation of Kim being best friends or really good friends with Paris Hilton, Hilton being a popular brand that every single person knows, right? And then obviously you have, the multiple sex tape stuff and leaks and things like that, which gains massive amounts of popularity there. And then, it brings you to this moment in 2007 of, this show where all of that stuff is all swirling. And I feel like the reason why I think it's so important as the power of proximity is because it's like all those little things check boxes in our mind of like, I'm interested in this, the center of this. Like, what is this? What is this family? How are they connected to like the cultural zeitgeist as much as they are? These sisters that have lived one of the more strange lives that you could possibly live up until this point. And like, how do they act? How do they treat each other?
Like, I literally want to kill her.
How do they, do other things? So that's like phase one. It's like, it's already, I think, for all of us, incredibly interesting. And I remember, all those things being talked about at the time, like there's this family and they have all these connections. It's like all this crazy stuff. And then you have sort of like the phase two, where they get into like, they start getting like, really famous and the show starts getting famous. And then they start dating all these celebrities.
Yeah.
So then you have this other phase of them being in the zeitgeist constantly with all these other things and the show getting extremely popular. Then social media comes and then they take over social media. And then this kind of third phase, which is, where they're sort of like owning the moment. And, it's if Kim, posts about your company, it's going to sell out your product and, all these other things where they're all just legitimately, independent business owners of multiple businesses and all those other things. That's sort of like the empire building phase. But I think it all starts with them being so close to other things. And the marketing takeaway there is like the power of proximity. It's like, it matters to be close to Hilton because everybody knows what a Hilton is. It matters to be close to the OJ Simpson case because everybody knew what that was. It matters to be close to the Olympics because everybody knew what that was. And so when it all comes about, you're like, I think I've heard of this family. I think I've heard of this person. I think I've heard this name. And who knows if you ever actually did, but it all starts to become really interesting to you. And I think that a lot of times in marketing, you're trying to figure out how you can leverage the power and the story of other things to do that sort of like jujitsu of like, take that energy and like put that wind in your sail too and propel you forward. And, Kim and everybody, including all of the younger, siblings and everything else, have propelled this to new heights.
I'm so happy that you brought that up because there's two things that have happened. I think you called it maybe the second or the third phase when they started to date celebrities or other celebrities, I should say, because they were dating celebrities previously. I think about Kim and how anyone who watches the show, hater or not a hater, knows that she wanted to be a model. She wanted to be on Vogue, but at the time she was more Juicy Couture. No shade towards Juicy, but Juicy Couture wasn't exactly going to get high-end fashion. And then she starts dating Kanye West. And Kanye gets invited to the Met Gala, where Kim was never getting invited to that Met Gala. And she is his plus one. And she shows up in this, she's very pregnant, giant floral thing. Look at the pictures. It's, you know, she loved it. I thought more like couch wear, but like I'm not in fashion. So that in our world, that's more of a partnership, right? Like she got the street cred and the credibility in the fashion world through her proximity, to use your word, to Kanye. And suddenly she had these doors that were open that were never open before. So her association with someone who was already interesting, cool, culturally, you know, iconic, and also in the fashion world, Kanye, got her this exposure and acceptance from those who wouldn't. We use that partnerships in the B2B side, right? Like even at Foursquare, we have our own partners that we think about doing different webinars with, different content with, and that's sort of the B2B marketing angle to sort of how Kim was navigating. Now, I don't think she dated Kanye for the fashion cred, but it was sort of a perk that went onto that. And I even think about like my husband knows more about the Kardashians because of who the Kardashians have dated, right? And so
of
he's
course.
a big basketball fan. You know, I know who Lamar Odom is now because of the like there's this weird type of cross-promotional audience blending that has happened simply because of who they have aligned themselves with. So your idea about proximity is so key to their journey. And I think it's a really nice takeaway too for those of us who are saying, hey, we need to expand. We need to think about a different audience. How do we do that? And sort of if you're taking the Kardashian route, I think you can see sort of they laid out a little bit of a blueprint of how intentionally or unintentionally they sort of had doors opened where they wouldn't before simply by who they were friends with, who they've dated, who they've decided to partner with for sure.
Yeah, and obviously, you know, Caitlyn Jenner also, you know, being a champion for transgender rights and all that other stuff that came in, you know, as part of this too, like just all part of the series, you know what I mean? Like it's all happening because I think that they got divorced in like 2015, like legally, right? Caitlyn Jenner and Kris Jenner. So, and then you also have multiple families, which I think that there's just like an amount of intrigue to this where it's like multiple marriages, multiple spouses, you know, all these different kids. There's a lot going on. And, you know, very Game of Thrones-esque. I know it's the real world, but just in terms of like, everyone sort of like, there just started being new Jenners that were coming out and nobody knew, and they all have K names. And like, if you're like, wait, which one is, and then someone's dating this person and who's dating this? Like, there's just a lot of complexity to the show that I think allows for so many different angles to cover and to study, which is how you get 25 seasons worth of content. Like the Faison family, we're never getting this show met. There's 5 of us, you know what I mean? Like, you know, it's like there's not enough interesting stuff going on. But again, it just sort of like swirls around their orbit, and everything does. You know, the Lamar Odom or Tristan Thompson, I mean, these are like fringe NBA stars. But when you play on the Lakers or you play with LeBron James, or you, again, the proximity to other mega stars allows for all that to happen. And now, you know, Kim's children are acting and doing voiceover work. I don't know if this is ever stopping. You know what I mean? I mean, are we going to be, you know, watching Kim K in a wheelchair, you know, in 40 years? I don't know. Like, you know what I mean?
I think one of the things that I definitely want to talk about, because this idea about it also going on, there are certain people who probably will not flip on this podcast because we're talking about Kim Kardashian, right? There's like, she can be very polarizing. There's like haters, people who love her. But I think to this idea about the dynasty that they're building, there's sometimes a little bit of an eye roll that comes along with that.
For sure.
I think what's really important from a brand perspective that I think Kim embodies is that if you are a legacy brand or a heritage brand, it is very difficult to move away from how people perceive you and what the core is. I think a lot about that at Foursquare. I started by saying most people know us as the consumer side of our business, but we've actually been building a geospatial platform And getting people to go along for that ride and see us as something different can be very difficult. I think for Kim, you mentioned the sex tape, right? Because that's really sort of how most people started to know her. When she first came out, and the reality show first came out, there was a lot of sort of slut shaming that was going on. Like, she's just famous because she made the sex tape. Her mother is pimping her out.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter that, she is a lawyer. It doesn't matter that her sister is a billionaire.
Kylie Jenner to the foyer.
The amount of businesses that she's done, a lot of work when it comes down to getting people who were wrongly imprisoned free, even though this is all documented on the reality show. All of these things that she's trying to do and the family's trying to do in order to get people to move them into a different bucket or grouping within their head is so incredibly difficult to do. So it's interesting too, when you talk about is she going to be in a wheelchair? Kim Kardashian will dye her hair black, lots of plastic surgery. The answer is probably yes, as she sets up her children for succession. But I do wonder if she didn't, it's that brand problem that we have if you are a legacy or heritage brand, to get people to view you in a much more positive, different light. Because if we were talking about, a mogul that, has all these successful businesses and was guest speaking at Harvard and, was interviewed by Kara Swisher about, the new tech brand that she has coming, I think a lot of it would be much more positive, our conversation, or she's a badass. She's a total, marketing badass, and she's done amazing. She's a great businesswoman. But instead, when we wind up talking about her or her legacy or what she's doing for the family in the future, there's always this element of I'm still going to use that Juicy Couture. And if anyone gets that reference, they get that reference of yeah, but there's always a yeah, but when we talk about Kim Kardashian. And I think for marketers, we see that if once you are thought of in one way, getting people to come along for the journey that you're something different, especially if you're still doing that same thing, is very, very difficult.
There's a great character in the movie The Prestige. Have you ever seen it?
I have not, so you'll have to talk to me a little bit about it.
Anyways, the plot of the story is there's two magicians who are trying to do this. It's a competition between these two magicians, in a life competition. They're at each other's throats, right? And they're basically trying to one-up each other with the coolest tricks. And so they go to this performance at a theater in London, and there's this guy named Chung-Ling Soo, and he is a very old man who's a disabled man. And his trick is that he's able to, basically put these massive objects onto this table from underneath his coat. And so that's his sort of magic. And, afterwards, the two magicians are talking. They're like, what's so crazy about this? And they're watching him walk to his horse and buggy or whatever. And he's being helped by his assistants to get in because he's old and feeble. The guy's like, the trick is that he's not old and feeble. The trick is that he's in perfect health. He's actually a pretty young guy, but he has to live his entire life as if he is old and feeble for the trick to work. Right. And I always think about this with Kim specifically, because it's they never turned it off. They just never, for their whole lives, they're like, we're going to be on 24/7, always, forever. And everyone has to be bought in on this. And as soon as you want to take the curtain and, put it back over us as a family, then it's the trick is over, but we have to sort of keep the cameras rolling. And that is an incredibly crazy life decision to make, is oh no, we're not just going to live in the public eye. We're not going to live in the tabloids. We're going to tell our own story. So the tabloids, which we're going to write about us anyways, we should just do it ourselves. And we should get as much control as possible in the way that that's told. And we're so popular now that we can actually do that. And then the magic is sort of never gone, and the trick is never up. And duration is always the most difficult part of building businesses. Starting something that's cool, convincing people to buy it, all of that, it's lasting for 25 seasons, staying relevant for almost 2 decades. That is incredibly challenging.
Agreed. I think what's so interesting is that narrative and that control is what we try to do as marketers. One, we love it, or if you're in the communication space. So controlling the narrative is always incredibly important. But two, the consistency from which they hit the narrative is so important, right? Like they know what they stand for. They know what the business is they want to promote. They know how to weave a narrative around it is so important. Going back to, when I talked about the fourth wall, there's a few episodes where Courtney decided she may not want to shoot the show.
Sometimes we just need a break, and I don't want to film with Kim.
And what I love about that is they actually filmed her deciding whether or not she wanted to be part of the show anymore. It was this really bizarro world of, deciding this is not what I want. Courtney was deciding she wanted to step away. She wanted to be a mom, although I wasn't sure how it was a this or that for Courtney, because as you pointed out, the kids are sometimes part of the show. So she didn't want to be part of the show, but ultimately she stayed on. And the benefit for her as she came out with, I think she was having gummies as part of her promotion is now they get to record her or document her as she builds her business and the business that she wants to do. And to your point is because they made the decision that the cameras don't go down, or if they do go down, it is picked up on social and then the cameras come back up. And they get to control what is said through their editing, through their decision about what to say in the media. And they also get to spin something. Like to your point, if something's going to be written about Chloe giving birth with, Tristan Thomas's second child, and they know the press is going to be around that because it's salacious. It has everything you want out of a good making, as long as you are not the center of it, a good story. They get to sort of shape that with the camera. So, and they get that benefit because of, to your point, also a little bit of the chains, the golden chains that go around them, which means their life is constant on camera. And they made that decision. So it has its benefits, it has its drawbacks. But when I think about the idea about that narrative control, I think it is such a parallel to what you do in marketing, where you want to control the message that goes out. If there's going to be a story that's written, how do you make sure that it's framed in the best possible light for your brand, et cetera? I also think when we're talking about narrative, Rob hasn't been on the show in a while, but I remember reading, there was this time where Rob started a sock company. Yeah. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but in every gossip magazine that was written and included Rob, they would refer to him as the sock mogul or the sock company king or the sock. So it would be Rob Kardashian steps out, the sock empire builder or whatever it is. And it goes into your comment around that narrative ownership and the control of it. If they're going to talk about us, they're going to talk about us the way we want to be talked about. And if I can find an old People article, you can attach it. It's just chef's kiss to the control perspective that they've had on their career and the way people talk about them, for sure.
That is great. I think it's called Arthur George Socks. I don't know if
oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying the name. I mean, I guess people can be passionate about socks. Unless you're Bombas, I'm not sure how passionate you can be, but apparently Rob has been passionate.
Well, these are designer socks. I should reference. There's not hiking shoes or hiking socks. I'm actually pretty passionate about socks. I got the Darn Tough. They're great. I'd say I'm as passionate, but I'm not into the designer socks. Maybe I should be. Gosh, a million more things that we could touch on. I do want to just touch on a couple things really quick about Kim specifically. I know it's not all about her, but goodness gracious, she has had so many little things that she's done over the years that were for anyone else would be a huge success. She launched an app that got to top 5 in the App Store. She did that break the internet thing that had it was one of the biggest social media things that has ever happened, whatever, 1 billion impressions or whatever it did. She was in a movie, which I totally forgot about, Temptation Confessions of a Marriage Counselor, produced, written and directed by Tyler Perry. $53 million in the box office. What?
Wow.
Dang.
Wow.
Which is like, she got a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actress. Everybody hated it. But again, like Tyler Perry is a huge, huge producer. And just a cool 53 mil in the box office. I have no idea if the movie made money. But like, again, these are like, she probably doesn't, and they as a family probably don't even get enough credit for all the crazy things that they've done that have worked. There's another thing that they did. They got in the top 5 in like the Apple Store. Oh, an emoji pack, Kimoji, top 5 apps in the first week of release. Just like thing after thing after thing after thing. They're just in the latest Paw Patrol movie, which I watch pretty much every single week with my son. And there's just a lot, and it's never ending. And to the point, it all fuels the show. All these little experiments fuel fodder for the show. And it's like this virtuous circle between social, premium content in this show and the other things that they're doing to make money and to build businesses. And those businesses don't even have to make money. They just fuel the content. It's good enough, but they actually end up going and making stupid amounts of money too, which is crazy.
They've created their own flywheel. We talk a lot about the flywheel generally, like in marketing. It is their flywheel, and they figured out how to accelerate it, how one can feed the other, to your point. It's amazing. I think Kris Jenner probably has started to get a little bit more recognition. I think once she wrote the book, she also does a masterclass, or like you can sign up for a masterclass. She's the GOAT.
Yeah.
And I think there can be, a little bit of sexism that sort of surrounds the family. But, she is very calculated. And I think she figured out what flywheel and how to make it go faster when it comes down to the feeding of one another, which is like the last season when Kim was the creative director for Dolce & Gabbana. I think it was Dolce & Gabbana. Like, this is her job, but it's also the crux, in addition to her fight with Kourtney, of what the season was about. So therefore you're watching the season and now you're interested in the Dolce stuff. It's like this great little feeding off of one another that they have figured out in a way that I actually don't think many other people have done as successfully as they have. I think to your point about them not getting necessarily as much credit in certain things.
Well, I think, and part of that is because they're on network TV. Like, this is like all this stuff, this all matters. Like, they're on network TV, which is like a lot of people pay attention to that. They're on social channels, so they can speak directly to their audiences. I mean, not directly because it's not like an own channel, but more or less directly. And they're talked about constantly, right? So they have like all the earned media side of things. And so they just have so many different vehicles for people to consume them. We were joking like the sun never sets on the Kardashian empire, but it's like 100% true. Like, you could consume content on them 24 hours a day, like if you wanted to. And a lot of that stuff, they're not even like making themselves, and every little bit of intrigue allows for, other things to spin the flywheel, It's different than Beyonce. It's different than Taylor Swift, it's different than, I don't know, Meryl Streep or something like that, right? It's like, they're not musicians, they're not actors, they are just reality TV stars. And I shouldn't say just, but it's like, it's redefined what you could possibly be as that by being a socialite. And it's funny because, okay, final thing here. It's funny because if you go back and look at the value that is created by tabloids, like back in the day, like the person who held the value of the tabloid was the tabloid owner, who was making something that people wanted to buy at the counter, right? The entire value chain that was the only transaction, right? It was like, I bought this thing for $4 and I go back and consume it. Whereas now the value chain is actually, they're making money on the transaction of that same thing, of being covered, people wanting to know what's in your private life, but they're making money off it every single which way, which again pisses off a lot of people, especially if you're attractive, right? I think that's like the other underpinning of this is like, it helps to be beautiful in this world. I think we all know that. But then you discount people's achievements if you are, right? Or if you're, a freak athletic person or whatever, or an incredible singer. It's like, well, they had it on easy street. Their parents were rich and they, whatever. Being worth $1 billion with a B is not easy street.
I will say one of my favorite memes, though, is you're not ugly, you're just poor. And it shows usually someone pre-plastic surgery and post-plastic surgery. But your commentary on the fact that people were interested in Kim initially because, one, she had the sex tape, which is, a thing of its own, but also she's really fucking pretty. Like you just have to call a spade a spade. Like she's really good looking no matter how much, surgery she has. But I will still stand by that. There's a Kardashian meme where it says, you're not ugly, you're just poor. So there is that as well.
And then final thing for me is like, now we get to see the next generation being so rich that they don't know how to do simple tasks. And that is the gift worth giving. The cutting the cucumber scene where the knife is like on the other side of her hand is like the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Just gotta chop up some cucumber. It's pretty easy. You go, girl.
Like, it's just so funny. And the bit in Arrested Development when the mom goes, what could a banana cost? $10? It's like that personified of like watching someone try to cut a cucumber that's never used a knife in their entire life. And anyways, it's just great.
Can I ask, Ian, were you or are you a hater or a lover of the Kardashians, or neutral, someplace in between?
I'm completely indifferent. I love studying it, obviously from a nerdy marketing standpoint, a media standpoint. I would say I was generally positive. I don't watch reality TV, so I was generally positive when they came out originally. Because again, and I also don't follow socialitism at all, so yeah, it's just not my target demo. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I'm interested or not. It's going to reach me. Who they're dating is going to reach me, right? The basketball podcast that I listen to, if that person's dating a Kardashian or a Jenner, I'm going to find out, right? It's like if the musician I pay attention, like, how many times did I see Pete Davidson is dating Kim Kardashian? I'm like, I don't even know who these people are. Like, I don't know. Pete Davidson, never even seen a single thing that this guy has ever been in my life. And I'm like, I know all this stuff about Pete Davidson. It's just like, it is truly the zeitgeist. It is inescapable, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, anyways, I'm definitely not a hater. Far from, again, this is why I bring up the thing about the prestige and the old man having to live his life that way. It's like, people say they want this. Do you want this? Do you want the lowest moments of your life to be broadcast and dissected on other people's podcasts? Like, never would I ever want that. For all the money in the world, it's not worth it. So anyways, that part I respect immensely in the business side and all of it. And then, the actual show, it's like, take it or leave it for me.
Got it. The term don't hate the player, hit the game. Like, they're so good at what they do, and I don't think they get enough respect. And I think it all goes back to Kris and probably Kim for, her drive for sure.
That's what, where I really land on is I think Kris is like really visionary in her ability to, and I think Caitlyn too, like making a meal of the moment at every opportunity, right? Like being an Olympic star from 1976, like, yeah, again, like I didn't know who the heck that was. I wasn't alive. So I didn't care at all. And especially like the decathlete was, again, that didn't matter when I was growing up. No one cared, especially like no one cares about your old man's favorite Olympic athlete. Like, give you a break. We're going to be like Katie Ledecky. You don't even know. She won all the golds, but like nobody cares. So, but I think Kris is legitimately like an absolute tycoon. And I think Kim deserves an absolute ton of credit. They all do. But for, taking every advantage that was given and using it to parlay it into a million other things.
Agreed, for sure.
Final thoughts on the Kardashians, Michelle?
I think whether or not you love them or you hate them as a marketing playbook, they have things that we should be looking to, from how they control the narrative, from how they think about distribution and ensuring that they stay relevant, to the amount of content that they create and what they do with that content is incredibly important for us to look at and to see what we can tease away from there to replicate. I think the last part too, around the branding part, is I don't think they have that nailed down yet. Meaning like the move from a heritage or legacy brand of what you were known for. I don't think they, from the Kardashian standpoint, have that nailed down. I still think there's a lot of taint despite all of their accomplishments. But I think as a textbook case of looking towards them to tease away, how do you make sure that you are distributing your message in the right way? How do you make sure that you're not reliant on only one tactic when it comes down to your marketing strategy? How does it come down to making sure you have enough content or the types of content? What do you think about, or how do you approach your brand? If you're known for one thing, how do you get people to think about from another? They are a playbook for us to sort of tap into. And I look forward to the empire where North is running her own reality show. I will be there for it, and I will click and subscribe for sure.
Comment, rate, and review. Speaking of transitions in brand, let's talk Foursquare. Like you mentioned, everybody knew about Foursquare. Everybody knows about Foursquare, but they don't know exactly what you do now to the fidelity that you probably want. How do you think about, crossing that little chasm of what we know as, just the consumer app to, this business technology?
Yeah, it's an interesting problem to have, because I think a lot of B2B marketers, if they think about their funnel, which I know is no longer a traditional funnel, but they think about, hey, we need to get our name out. We need the awareness of it. We actually don't have an awareness problem at Foursquare. We have a one click down of, you're a geospatial platform. And then what does that mean? So we've approached it in two ways. One is by being really precise with the audience that we're going after. So we understand who we're looking to sell to. And that may mean it comes at the cost of you going home for the holidays and having your parents go, no, what does Foursquare do? And that's because your mother probably isn't part of our ABM strategy. So we fully defined who we're trying to speak to. And then we've created a narrative and a story around the messaging of what we want them to say. And we do that through various tactics, through a lot of thought leadership and content distribution and some pretty basic marketing block and tackling. But really, it starts with knowing who our persona is. We market, our tools and software are used by developers. They're used by agencies and marketers such as ourselves to measure whether an out-of-home campaign brought people in store, product managers. So we know our 3 or 4 cohorts, and we have a really tight story and value proposition that we know that we want to communicate with them. So we think about it probably more as a scoping exercise, because with consumer, your funnel and your scope is so large. We know there's 3 or 4 people we want to talk to. So we wind up scoping down our marketing strategy to just focus on those particular audiences.
And for our listeners, you can go to location.foursquare.com to check out the website. And the reason why I was talking about the website at the beginning is if you go to foursquare.com, it's pretty simple website. You got List My Business, you got Find a Business, you got our location platform, and you got About. And then when you click into the Explore Geospatial platform, it's like a whole company opens up with, a very, very familiar feeling B2B technology company that you'd schedule a demo, and you see all the logos, and you see, all the really cool companies that are really big companies that are using the technology. And how do you think about brand as it relates to the content that you're creating and putting on the website and getting that thought leadership out there?
Well, thank you for that, because it was something that when I first came to Foursquare, the initial strategy was, when you come to foursquare.com, we wanted you to know that we were more than just a consumer company. We have a whole different side of us. However, the content that was there was all of our B2B content, which I'll say. So webinars, we just hired a new head of sales, but the people who are coming to foursquare.com are looking for Domino's or, TJ Maxx. So we had to think about the user journey. And that is why when you come to foursquare.com, we give you 3 different places to go. And the brand, I had to re-envision what the Foursquare B2B brand was, because the initial brand was very heavy on the consumer aesthetics. Every one of us knows a B2B company. When you go to their website, there are visual cues. There's different languages that we use within our industry that raises the hand that goes, hey, we're selling software here. And we had to start to incorporate that into our brand book and our brand guidelines. So we rely less on stock photography and we start to lean more into some of how we interpret what location data could look like. A lot of different charts, graphs. How would you talk about attribution? What does attribution look like? We went to what do developers like? We start to use more of our black versus some of our other colors. You can see we start to use a lot more animation in order to visually cue to the customer and or consumer. If you're on the consumer, you're like, hey, I'm probably not in the right spot just visually. If you're a customer of ours, you're like, yes, I found what I was looking for. So we did take another look at our brand identity to make it more friendly for the enterprise side, which is different than our bright pink city guide side of the house, which is much more fun, much more playful. It uses a lot of the imagery that the places are about. So restaurant imagery, etc. So we sort of made a break between the two when we think about it from a brand perspective.
Very cool. And then what about, the content that you're creating? How do you think about your content strategy?
Our content strategy breaks down along our personas as well. And in a way, I would think about it in two different cohorts. We sell software. That's essentially what we're doing at the end of the day. We're selling technology. So we have two different buckets. One, which is highly technical, which would appeal to someone who is a developer or someone who's in data science. And that is stuff that marketing generally can't beat. So we have these technical pieces, and then we have a little bit more of the business-focused content that we focus on, which obviously can be written by folks in marketing. So we do those two buckets, and we do those specifically because when you're talking about software, and if you're talking to a developer, you need to make sure they're speaking their language. You need to make sure if you're talking to a data scientist about the type of methodology that you're using when it comes down to attribution, you can't jazz hands that. You need to be able to speak exactly the language. So our content strategy is broken into two. And then we think about the distribution method around how do we make sure we get eyeballs to that, either through our own site with SEO/SEM and driving traffic, or through partnerships when it comes down to the distribution.
Do you have any favorite content or campaigns that you've worked on?
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about Foursquare, I would say we launched a really interesting technology that was infrastructure focused. It was our graph campaign. We decided to come up with and launch graph technology to be the underpinning of a lot of our products that our customers were going to consume. And what's interesting about graph, which a lot of B2B companies deal with, is that we don't sell a physical product. Everything is an interpretation of what graph technology would be or location would be. Like when we sell software, you're not selling an actual thing. So for us, the graph campaign was probably one of the more interesting ones, because what we did was we started a year-long content strategy that surrounded the graph that we were about to launch. It started off with doing predictions byline that we wrote to say, here's some of the things that we think are coming this year. We followed it up with our press team, so did some really great press around here's what we think is coming this year. And it all culminated with a launch of this new technology that we actually got a patent around and started to talk to people about why we think the underlying technology of our products is so differentiated in the marketplace. We actually won an award or two on it when it comes down to. So we knew we were on the right track. We did the right drumbeat of content to leading up to the announcement, which I think was the right thing to do. And then did an aha announcement where we did like a burst strategy of lots of content, lots of speaking, lots of media in a very short period of time in the September of the launch. So I would say that's my favorite. Also because you could probably go to our website and search for graph. The design team, my creative director, did an absolutely bang up job of visualizing graph. It's fun, it's playful, but it's still B2B, which I really appreciate.
Any other thoughts on ROI of content or how you think about it as the head of marketing?
Yeah, I think everything is ROI focused. I was asked pretty recently, are you more of a brand marketer or are you more of a performance marketer? And I would say that's a false choice.
Yeah,
everything
who asked
that
these
we
questions?
I know. And the person was not in marketing and they wouldn't take my answer for an answer where I was like, that is a false choice. Everything that we do, you may measure it differently, right? But everything is in service of driving revenue for the business. So I think there's two things. One is I really believe that no matter where you are within the no longer sequential funnel, we're all in service of driving revenue for the business, whether that's direct revenue, whether that's assisted through the sales team. The last thing I would say is there are technologies out there that you can use to help really with the measurement of ROI. It may take longer to get to where you need to be, but there are the measurement capabilities out there through your attribution providers, through some of the now AI technologies that can help sort of weave together your marketing tactics. I would say John Wanamaker was famous for the quote, "Half of my advertising spend is wasted. The only problem is I don't know which half." It is no longer true nowadays. Like, I think we have a much better direction of how we are spending our money and where we're actually seeing movement. The question is what aperture you look at it. Is it a week? Is it 6 weeks? Is it 6 months? So really making sure you have that right window to measure your media, I think is also going to be very important.
Yeah, we literally put that quote in the intro to this podcast.
Did you? Oh, well, that was well planned. Well planned. Yeah. I knew it all along. So did you guys know. So perfect.
Yeah. Fun fact. It's my buddy's wife who is the voice on the quote in our podcast. Shout out to Tanya. Well, she's my friend too. I don't know why it's specified it's not that way. And the reason why I put it in there is I think that inherently business is about waste, right? It's about resources and waste. So if you're not thinking about waste, and obviously you want to minimize waste, but that's not the only goal. The goal is to maximize revenue, right? So it's like, if you're doing things to minimize waste, it's like, you're going to be penny wise and pound foolish. Like, that's just, there's no way to avoid it, right? You cannot possibly maximize revenue if you're pinching pennies. It's just not how this business works. That's why I agree that we're not there right now. We're half of it. But I do think that half of it, you don't know if it's going to work. That's for darn sure. Whether it's content or otherwise.
I think what is going to work and what's going to land, part of what I encourage my team to do is to discuss everything in terms of testing. If you really don't know what you're going to get from a marketing tactic, it takes a little bit of education for the finance team. But I feel like if you are really looking at your marketing plan as a living, breathing thing, not a set it and forget it, where you are looking to test out different types of tactics and you know how you're going to measure it, it is a much easier journey for everyone on the path to how are we driving revenue than if we are not. Things change, the world changes. What you could have done last year as a piece of content could have landed really well, but the reason it could have landed well is something completely different. This year, we have an election year and we have Olympics coming up. So my assumption is whatever you did last year may not be as impactful this year because you have two pretty big tentpoles that are either drawing people's attention, filling up the news space, or people have better content or more content aligned to those things that people are really finding interesting and consuming. So I think to your point a bit, if you start to think about things as testing and you may not know how this piece of content is really going to do, I think it's a lot easier for your internal stakeholders to understand if you're giving them the context and sort of setting things up as a test and learn strategy.
And who knows, one of those Olympians might just have the next great mogul years from now as their offspring. You never know. Before we get out of here, what is one piece of advice for someone who is heading marketing and thinking about their content strategy?
I would say, I'm going to give you two pieces. One, because I've said part of it already, but when you're thinking about your content strategy, it is always worth it to look at different industries and how they've approached their content strategies. Very similar to how I started out the podcast, Ian, saying how much I like this approach, because you will learn more by looking at different companies outside of your own industry about how you can be better, different, etc. I think the second thing is to embrace technology. That's my new one when it comes down to content. Everyone is talking about AI. It's the biggest buzzwords you can do. If you want to sell B2B technology, just say it's AI. You have generative or, non-generative AI in it. It'll sell like hotcakes. But when it comes to content creation and your content strategy, there are tools and technology out there that can help elevate you in ways that you may not have been able to do 2 years ago. So when you think about content strategy, the ask or the advice I would have is don't shy away. And you really have to be aggressive and to be the trailblazer when it comes down to new technologies that are impacting marketing, specifically content. It will be your blessing that you look back on when you've realized that you are creating better content, faster content, more relevant content, or doing it with less resources, simply because you took, a couple hours out of your day to really think through what technology is out there that can help you when it comes down to your content strategy.
Fantastic. Great advice. For our listeners, you can go to Foursquare.com, go to location.foursquare.com for all the juicy B2B details. Michele, wonderful having you on the show. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Nothing to plug. Mine is, I hope everyone is looking at the Kardashians as a marketing guru and has another perspective if they didn't come into this thinking that. So Fingers crossed on that.
I know I do. Thank you so much, Michele. Appreciate it. Take care.
I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I have to go.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.